Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. We are pleased to welcome you all to our hybrid annual general meeting. For those members online, please post any questions that you may have in the question and answer tab, and we will address them during the proceedings. I extend a special welcome to the guests and representatives of our sister institutes and associations, past presidents, honorary life fellows, senior members of the industry, honorary life fellows, our members and other guests who are here and have joined online. And a special welcome to the Engineering Council of South Africa President Rafiwe Buthelezi, the Geological Society of South Africa past President Dr. Tanya Marshall, South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, the President Pascal Motsoali, and the President of the National Institute of Rock Engineering, Kevin Lebron. The past presidents in attendance, Nick Bartso, Rodney Jones, Roger Dixon, Jim Porter, Rodney Pickering, and Dick Stacey. Just the formalities. So the minutes of the previous edition, previous AGM were published in the special edition of the AGM and sent to all members by email. So could I have a proposer and a seconder of the minutes? I propose that the minutes as circulated be accepted as a true reflection of the meeting held on 17th of August 2023. So proposer and a seconder. Thank you. Okay. And then, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm William Jochen, and I'm the president of the SAIMM, well, for the next hour or so, and then and then I will hand it over. I'd just like to introduce, or we have two masters of ceremony, Mike Solomon and Kondwani Banda, and I will introduce Mike, and Kondwani will take over at a later stage of the meeting. So, Professor Solomon is a mining engineer with 43 years of experience in the gold, platinum, diamond and coal sectors. He was the first operational CEO of Wesizwe Platinum, a large platinum producing underground mine. He took the company from the first borehole through listing on the JSE and the raising of the full funding for the capital construction of the Bakubeng Platinum Mine, which is now in production. He served on the board of the ASX-listed Gold One, the precursor to Sibanye-Stillwater, as chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee and the Health, Safety and Environment Committee. He is adjunct professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Cape Town, where he specializes in the economic diversification and the decarbonisation of mines. He is a non-executive director of Sedibelo Resources Limited, for whom he chairs the board technical committee and sits on the ESG committee. He has recently been awarded an honorary life fellowship of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy for his contribution to mining in South Africa. He has served as a council member of the Institute for over a decade, and he chairs the SAIMM ESG committee, and he's also an office bearer. So, thanks, Mike.
Very much indeed, William, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As a point of departure, it's my sad duty to announce the deaths of the following members of the Institute. Our honorary life fellow, Sadupi Josias Ramsram-Khopa, whom we all know so well, was president from 2002 to 2003. Retired member Peter Davey, and members Professor Peter Gaylard, Richard Smith, Thomas van Niekerk, and Cecil Zlotnik. We also heard today of the very sad passing of Mike Valenti last week. I'd like to ask you all to please observe a moment's silence in memory of the deceased, and we extend the Institute's condolences to the bereaved. Thank you. I'd like to ask on Dr. Elias Matindi to present a summary of the financial report.
Thank you very much, and good evening. I'm going to present the financial and administrative matters. My name is Elias Matindi. I was the Honorary Treasurer. I will start by looking at the financial performance of the financial year 2024 compared to the previous financial year. What you see here is the total expenditure. Our expenditure increased by 11.5%. And this was necessitated by the improvements and expansion that was happening in the institute. The total deficit, unfortunately, increased to 2 million, culminating in a net loss of about 700,000, 0.7 million. Compared to the previous 5 years, the income was unchanged at 16.2 million relative to the previous financial year. The Technical Program Committee and the programs was resilient, contributing to about 11.4 million rands for the financial year 2024. We had 3 corporate partners on board, and as we speak, efforts are ongoing to sign up potential corporate partners. Relative to the previous financial year, our operating expenses increased by 11.5%. From 7.8 million reported in 2023 to 8.7 million in 2024. This was driven by the increase in staff salaries as well as the staff headcount. I'm going to present to you the performance of our investment portfolio. In the previous financial year, the institute earned dividends of 1.3 million rands. This was a positive growth because of the previous of the turbulence that we experienced during the year. The closing balance for the investment account is currently at 35.1 million. During the course of the year, we requested a drawdown of 1.2 million to fund the operational activities of the institute, and the current year-to-date cumulative drawdown now sits at 23.7 million. For non-TP activities, we have advertising revenue, which improved compared from the previous financial years. Unfortunately, 200 members were struck off from the membership register due to non-payments. And at the moment, we do have 1,956 paying members. In terms of cash flow management, the total trade and other receivables reduced slightly from 2.1 million experienced in 2023 to 1.7 million. And as we speak, the team is making reasonable efforts to reduce the level of debtors. The institute, as I mentioned earlier, the institute made a drawdown of 1.2 million from our AFC investments. This was to facilitate the operations of the institute. We are happy to announce that the future revenue looks promising because we have a number of high impact conferences that are lined up, and the institute is already trying to make sure that we increase the visibility of those upcoming events. In closing remarks, I would like to thank the current, almost past president, William Jochen, office bearers and all members serving on the various technical program committees, our auditors, Genesis Chartered Accountants, D, who is responsible for AFC investments, SAIMM, Dennis, and all SAIMM staff for the day-to-day running of the SAIMM team. And of course, William, who is now going forward, is going to be our new honorary treasurer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Matindi. Are there any questions for Dr. Matindi on the annual financial statements? If not, let me proceed with the program. I'd like to now call upon William Jochen to present the annual report. Oh, I beg your pardon. May I have a proposal for the annual financial statements, Dr. Porter? Seconder. Right. Thank you very much. I beg your pardon, President. If I can now ask you to present the annual report.
Yeah, thanks. As you saw, we had a deficit for the year. What I want to show you is that you will have noticed that in the previous AGMs, our presidents have presented a number of strategic initiatives which we've embarked upon, and I would like to show you some highlights which show you how we're progressing with some of those strategic initiatives. And importantly, we need to transition the SAIMM to adapt to basically our new way of working, new expectations of members, and of course the requirements of the mining industry and what we want to achieve. So I see it as an investment. I think it's a necessary investment, but we want to move towards a status of financial sustainability. So I'll talk about some of the highlights, but perhaps I don't have a slide to remind me of this. I'm going to quickly just mention that we had the branch chairpersons. We had a lunch today, so that was well attended by, maybe I can ask the branch chairs to stand up, because this is quite an important, really important aspect of our society. So we've had, had 3 new branches launched this year, or 3 relaunches of the branches. So the Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Pretoria. And Peter is online. Peter's online at the moment, so unfortunately, some of our branches have gone a bit quiet. So the Northwestern Cape and Northern Cape, Western Cape, and Natal, we need to reactivate those. So thanks everybody for coming. We had a very good discussion during our lunch, and I think we're going to move forward with our branches and get them active again. All right. So importantly, our technical programs. So Gary leads the mining program, and Zelmia the metallurgical program. And of course, Camilla is the head of events, and Gugu and Nazli ably assist her. I think what's important to note is that we had 34 events during the last year, of which 11 were contact hybrid conferences, 5 online conferences, 4 online short courses, and 14 webinars. So as you can see, we're adapting to the new world and starting to present more online material, and we had 3,468 delegates, which represents a 1/3 increase, and that was across 45 countries. We would certainly like to see a lot more than that, and I think so with the online availability, I think we've got an opportunity to significantly increase that number and grow it quite significantly. So Zelmia announced the podcasts last year. She's supported by Zeno, who's our new head of marketing. So that has gone exceptionally well. So there have been a total of 14 episodes to date. So for those of you who haven't gone to look at our podcast, it's called The Crucible. If you want to find it, just look for search for the SAIMM. That's the easiest way to find it. It is Solid Gold Podcast Studios are our partner, and they run the podcasts for us. So I think that's gone pretty well. And then Solid Gold also produced some statistics on the podcasts. So you can see the number of unique users and listens presented here, and you can see how they've increased as the awareness has grown over time. The spikes are correlated with the release of a new podcast. I think the biggest spike there was a podcast on the rare earths. So the Publications Committee has been working extremely hard. So Rosemary is our editor, and she's supported by Taryn, who's head of publications, and Julie, who prepares the journal. So the journal continues to move forward, and so we're publishing papers every month, and our referees are working very hard to make sure that we get that turnover of papers going through. But importantly, I want to just draw to your attention a new book release. So this is a book by Brian Prothero. It's called Comro's Legacy, Research and Development of Stoping Mining Machinery and Technologies. The launch was presented in October last year, so just draw your attention to the book. I think it's a very interesting book. It just talks about the history of research, of the Research Institute in South Africa. And I think there's also an opportunity to maybe pick up some of that research with new technologies that are now available, that were not available at the time. So the ESGS committee, so this committee has been going for 3 years now. So Mike is the chair of that committee, and he's supported by a strong committee. Mponi is our new committee secretary. So we appointed Mponi as a committee secretary because we've introduced a number of new committees to address some of the key issues. So we needed to appoint someone to actually manage those committees and ensure that the events get driven. So I've just listed some of the events. So there was a mine closure strategy webinar series, another closure seminar. I can't remember what the third one is, but there was a mine closure seminar and then one on diversity. And importantly, the new Mines, Wines and Art event, we had the inaugural event in February 2024, which was organized by Mike. And it was certainly it was well attended, I think over 80 delegates, including the King and Queen of Lesotho, a number of CEOs, and other dignitaries. So this we would like this to be a premier event at the Indaba going forward. And then just an important reminder of the ESG and the minerals industry conference, Challenges and Opportunities, which is coming up in October, which the committee has been working hard on throughout the year. So our tailings committee was also established a few years ago. So they hosted it's led by Andrew currently, and Adele chaired the most recent conference, which is the third conference in the series. There's the brochure there. Mponi looks after the committee. The other important issue that I'm sure you're aware of, but just in case I want to remind you, is the SAIMM raised funds to update and revise the SANS 1026 Mine Residue Code of Practice, and that's to align with the GISTM and importantly to incorporate specific South African requirements and practices into that new standard. The Global Mining Professionals Association, so SAIMM is a member of this of the association, so it brings together the mining institutes, mining and minerals institutes from around the world. And importantly, through that, they have a committee called Global Action on Tailings, which our tailings committee is linked to, and of course onemine.org, where you've got a repository of papers that you can access as a member of the SAIMM through that. So SAIMM attended the GMPA summit in London. They have several meetings a year. I think the other important thing about being part of this association is we've got an opportunity to learn from our other institutes around the world. So things that are working well for them, we can actually we can actually take some of those ideas on board and try to implement them. So Sam is the key person for the GMPA. I'm also involved. Our Policy Advocacy and Public Affairs Committee, it was established to address any issues that may arise in the industry that we have to deal with. And I think the one that I just draw your attention to, so the EXA is working towards enforcing the identification of engineering work and codes of practice for mining engineering work. So a code of practice was drafted by members of the SAIMM, which was led by God knows. But one of the big challenges associated with that is the engineering work, the identification, those regulations. Most of those regulations that pertain to the mining are actually, they clash with what's in the Mine Health and Safety Act, because they deal with operations and safety and so on. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not implementable at this stage. It's not practical. And the Mine Health and Safety Act, as I'm sure you're all aware, has got specific qualifications, specific definitions of competent persons that are not engineers. They do not link to, they're not talking to the to EXA. And so that has to change, I think, before we can actually move forward on that. So Tsepo leads the committee, and Moeponi is our committee secretary. So just a quick update on our long-standing committees, SAM Codes and SAMCOT. So there's SAM Codes, Sofiso from the GSSA is the current chair. Joseph is the vice president representing the SAIMM and will take over at the end of Sofiso's term, as outlined by the rotation agreement between the GSSA. I think important things that I'd like to update you on is the SAM ESG guideline it's being updated, and they want to, the objective of that is to ensure that the ESG is incorporated in all aspects of mining projects, right from exploration through to closure, and making sure that it's actually properly considered in the mineral reporting codes. And they're also working on developing a guideline for reporting industrial minerals. SANCOT, committee that I've enjoyed being involved with for quite some time, that is currently chaired by Jean. She took over from Gerard, and they had some good events during last year. They had the president of the International Tunneling Association present a webinar, and Herringknecht presented a seminar on mechanized tunnel boring or mechanized boring. And there was a meeting with the the Council of the International Tunneling Association that was held in Cape Town. So these committees have been very active. So just some news. So SANAR asked us to help them with the administration of their services. So we now have a contract to provide secretarial services, and I think this will just only strengthen the long-standing collaboration that we've had between SANAR and the SAIMM over many years. Kevin LeBron, I think he's here. Kevin is the SANAR president. I'm sure he's here somewhere. And Prudence, I'm sure you remember Prudence previously ran membership, so she's rejoined the SAIMM and taken on the role of the SANAR administrator. So just quick, we're going to acknowledge the corporate partners a little bit later, but I just want to remind you of this important strategy. So I think this is it's a key strategy moving forward, going forward, and I think being a corporate partner, it enables companies to address issues that are important to them, so they can ensure that those discussions are brought to the table and they're addressed. through various committees and webinars and conferences and so on, and ensure that they get access to the mentoring and professional development of employees. There's also an opportunity to run joint events. And really, the benefit to the SAIMM, in addition to what I've just mentioned, is increasing membership and participation in our events and conferences, and perhaps more marketing and sponsorships. So we've lost Impala in there. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, so we've got 3 corporate partners. Apologies to Impala. I'm not sure what happened there, but we will mention it a bit later. Yeah. So we've got 3 corporate partners currently. There we go. So it's come back. Yeah. So, okay. So our office bearers, we've been quite busy. So we've had a number of strategic initiatives that we've implemented over the last few years, but we thought it was quite important to formalize our strategy. And I'll start. This is a proposed vision. I know we haven't actually presented it to council, so it's not finalized, but this is what the office bearers came up with. And this is: the Institute is an unwavering advocate for minerals industry professionals, nurturing their capabilities and creating an environment where their expertise contributes to the world's development. We will do this by creating a platform for and facilitating substantive, responsible, and impactful transdisciplinary collaboration, and fundamentally diversifying the Institute's membership and its culture. We will change the way the world mines through a commitment to informing, educating, convening, and engaging with all professionals in the mineral sector. So we've put a strategic thrust charter together. There's more. I'm not going to go into detail on it. I'll just talk about the main strategic thrusts that we've presented, and each of the office bearers has been assigned a thrust that they need to lead with. There are details for each of these thrusts is expanded with milestones and activities that we need to do. So the first one is to be recognized as the leading institute for the mineral sector, and that's going to involve a lot of engagement with industry leaders, and some professional, firstly to make sure that we understand what the industry requires, what they want us to deliver, and then secondly, we also need to improve our marketing of what we're actually doing well currently. The next one is to increase the diversity and participation of membership to improve the delivery capacity of the Institute. So that, when I talk about diversity, cultural diversity is certainly a key component of that, but I'm also talking about skills diversity. So to address these new challenges, ESG, tailings, decarbonisation, and these various issues, we really need to attract people with different skills and bring them into the Institute and help us to transfer that knowledge to our members through the guidance of our various committees. So we need to equip our membership to navigate the increasing complexity of the mineral sector. So that is actually developing and presenting material to the industry and encouraging the engagement to make sure that our membership can handle the complexity of the mineral sector. The last one is to develop the SAIMM for the digital age, and that's to improve the efficiency of the systems that we currently have in place to make sure that our members have a good experience interacting with the Institute. And that'll involve choosing the correct technologies and doing more smart processing of data, and it will also obviously involve upskilling of the secretariat, the team. So I think lots of exciting things going forward. And then I'll finish off my report by just talking about the SAIMM team. So Sam, as you will know, is our manager, and she has. So the other point that I want to make is we have employed a number of interns. So this is also contributing to the development of our youth, but it also helps to perhaps carry out some of the more mundane and menial activities and make sure that those are carried through and just to increase the capacity. So Dennis, and he's assisted by Chepi, they run the finance. I introduced you to Moy Poni earlier, who's our committee secretary. Prudence has rejoined as the SANAR administrator. We have an intern looking after data systems that is in Paul, and he's actually mentored by our digital transformation team within SRK as well. So for our conferences and events, Camilla is now she's the head of conferences. And she's assisted by Gugu and Nazli, Kayla, China, and Umpa. For our membership, so Klatsi is our head of membership. Kia is engagement specialist and manages the branches. Solo, Tsepi, Lorato, and for TV are all assisting with that. And then lastly, so we have a brand communications and marketing. So Zena joined us a little over a month ago as our head of brand communications and marketing, and she comes with some very good qualifications, which we would like to improve the way that we do our marketing. And she's assisted by Tebogo and Patricia. So Taryn is our publications coordinator, and Julie is the DTP operator. And all right, so that's the end of my report. I'm just going to go through a few more formalities. I don't know if anybody wants to raise any questions at this stage, or you can ask me after the meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions after the meeting. So, all right. So the first thing is the declaration and election of office bearers. That's for the 2024-2025 session. So I have the pleasure in announcing that in accordance with clauses 3.5, 5.1, and 5.2 of our Constitution, the retiring council has elected the following office bearers for the ensuing year. Our president will be Elias Matindi, President-elect Gary Lane, Senior Vice President Chepo Mola, Junior Vice President Mike Solomon, immediate past president is myself, and I will go back to being the honorary treasurer as well. So the council has also elected an incoming junior vice president, and I'm pleased to announce that Bongi Nsolengo is our new incoming junior vice president. Okay. Thank you. Okay. In terms of the election of ordinary members of council, I have to report that in terms of clause 3.2.7 of the Constitution and bylaw B2.1, there were 14 vacancies, and the following members are now declared elected. So that's Wouter Broodryk, Zochre Fakre, Bekir Genk, Katlejo Letsoalo, Setabili Madolo, Anthony Mello, Cabello Mosebi, Mark Monroe, Sandeep Naik, Godnose Njowa, Stephen Ruprecht, Andrew van Sale, and John Walls. Okay, and then I'll call on Mike to continue with the
Thanks very much, Mr. President. Thank you. So it's a significant day, ladies and gentlemen. I have now been promoted from being junior vice president to being senior vice president, so thank you very much. In terms of the bylaw F5.2 and F5.3 of the Constitution, the chairpersons of the branches are as follows. Kabela Mosebi, Botswana. The DRC chairmanship is vacant at the moment, and we hope to fill that in the near future. The Johannesburg branch, Nirvana Rampersad. Namibia is Thomas Ipanda. Limpopo, Stephen Zulu. Both Northern Cape and Northwest are still vacant. Pretoria, Peter Pistorius. Western Cape is vacant. Zambia, Nathan Kazembe. Zimbabwe, Lloyd Chamu, and Zululand is also vacant. So we'll be reporting back on those positions in the near future, hopefully, as we look for people to chair those committees. The chairperson of the South African National Council on Tunneling SANCOT is Jean Walls. The branch chairpersons of SANCOT and the branch chairpersons and the SANCOT chairperson will serve as ex officio members of our council. The following vice presidents have signified their willingness to serve on the council for the ensuing year. And I think I need to go to the next slide. And that is Nick Barkser, Richard Beck, Zelmia Buerta, Vaughan Duke, Isabel Geldenhuys, Rodney Jones, Cuthbert Msingwini, Selo Ndlovu, Jim Porter, Mike Rogers, and Gordon Smith. So I'd like to thank those past presidents who've indicated that they cannot serve in council for the next year for the incredible amount of time, effort, and dedication that they put into this institute in the past. I'd also like to record our thanks to past presidents for their continued support, and I congratulate those elected. I thank those who have agreed to serve on another term of office. On the election of the auditors and honorary legal advisors for the year 2024, I propose that Genesis be appointed as auditors for the following year. I also propose that MH attorneys be appointed as honorary legal advisors. May I please have a seconder? A seconder, sorry. A seconder. Could I have a seconder? Thank you. Thanks very much, Bungi. We have a seconder. Right, corporate partnerships. Mark, you're still a valid partner, I believe. It's a good comeback on William's side. We'd like to an update on the corporate partnerships. I'd really like to thank our new corporate partners, Impala Platinum, Sibanye Stillwater, and SRK for their willingness to support the SAIMM. As the President said, pointed out earlier on, the corporate partnerships are really a critical way forward, and I would encourage those corporate members here to consider persuading their boards, their executive committees and their boards to take out corporate partners. As we recorded in 2023, Implats have renewed their corporate partnership on the agreement for the next 2 years, and I'd like to thank SRK for coming on board this year as our newest corporate partnership. There was no nepotism involved in this decision. And I'd like to call on Robert Armstrong to accept a token of appreciation on behalf of SRK. Right, I'm going to now give you a break and hand over to Kondwani Banda as my co-presenter this afternoon. Kondwani is a professionally registered chemical engineer with EXA and a certified project management professional with 10 years experience in all stages of project management lifecycle. He's an internationally published researcher with pyrometallurgy experience and a strong background in plant operations, commissioning, leadership, and customer relations. He has experience in working with multidisciplinary teams and managing more than 10 projects simultaneously. I'll take my hat off to you there, and ensuring timely project delivery. In addition to his technical experience, he also has operational experience through the execution of operational business improvement projects that contribute to the strategic and business improvement directives of one of the major platinum producers in South Africa. He holds an MSc in mechanical and metallurgical engineering and a BSc in chemical engineering, both from the University of Witwatersrand. He's passionate about human capital development and actively mentors junior to mid-level engineers and participates in their professional associations. Kondwani is currently the chairperson of SIMM's Young Professionals Council, the YPC, and has been involved with SIMM since 2015. Kondwani.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll be presenting on the Young Professionals Council's matters. Declaration of election of the Young Professional Council for the 2024 to 2025 session. In terms of the bylaw, I4.4.6, the Young Professionals Council must consist of a minimum of 13 and a maximum of 18 members who are 35 years old and younger. This term we received the number of nominations that allowed us not to actually conduct a formal voting process, and the following members are sitting on the council currently. So we have Tonderai Chikanda, Tinashe Chikomo, Yunali Hall, Tanya Mapaire, Spongile Moeti, Kaukelo Mfukeng, Adelaide Mukhanedi, Khoitione Mutiane, Nigel Munoskweru, Amtenge Shivute, Tandile Stresha, Makiti Tema, Vuyo Tototo, Victoria Upindi. And for the office bearers, we have the chairperson again is myself. The vice chairperson is Connie Chijara, secretary Tokyo Ndlela, and then the treasurer Simon Naika. So just on the chairperson's part, it was actually meant to go to Sancho Nyoni, but with regards to some of the opportunities that he got from studies as well as employment opportunities, he is moving to China. So as such, then continue for the second term. And as such, yeah, looking forward to a great term with young professionals again. Back to you, Mike Solomon.
Thanks very much indeed, Kondwani. So it now gives me great pleasure to present Kondwani Banda a commemorative plaque as memento of his term of office as the YPC chairperson. And Kondwani, will you make a short acceptance speech?
I think the best part about participating within the Young Professionals Council has always been the opportunity to impact the lives of the students, but most importantly, the young professionals that are going into the industry. What we've observed quite a lot, especially last year, is some of the challenges that the young professionals are facing. So to give you an example, I think most of us have reached a level where we understand where we're going with our careers, what we want, and as such, the motivation is intrinsic. But young professionals that are going into the industry now, there's a huge shift in terms of some of the things that are keeping them in the industry, the challenges that they're facing, but most importantly, opportunities that are readily available. So some of the challenges, for example, the retention of female engineers within the mining industry, the retention of all engineers within industry, because the financial sector is also picking up some of those engineers into those areas. So it is great to actually be in the forefront, working with young professionals, especially from the university level, and as they transition into their working environment, and inspire them, give them the right tools to survive once they get into the industry, but also giving them that reality check. Because often what you learn in the university and when you start working, there's a huge contrast. But being able to be there, engage with them, and ensure that we are giving them the right tools and skills to ensure that they keep growing within their career journeys. And most importantly, they are getting involved and engaged. The key highlight, I'd say, for the previous term has been reinvigorating the relationships that we have with universities and getting the young professionals within the universities involved, and so that we can form student chapters. And we have successfully done so within Gauteng, but often you'll find that the challenge is usually the universities outside of Gauteng, and which is the next focus for this particular term. And as such, I think something that we can all look forward to this year, we'll be having a focused month. So we'll have a YPC month in October, where we have all engagements that represent young professionals' interest taking place. So the student colloquium will be in October. We'll have the student debate in October, as well as the young professionals' leadership conference in October, such that as the experienced professionals have their mining in Daba and related events, we can have something focused, similar, and with similar focus and goal towards adding value into the mining industry, but in this case, young professional driven. So as I stand here, it is such a great honor, as well as, if I may put it, it's a blessing. So it's an honor and a blessing to be able to be given that opportunity to impact young professional people's lives, but also have the opportunity to engage with industry professionals and learn and develop as well. With that said, I'd like to thank you.
Well done, Kundwani, and thank you very much indeed. Right, on to other awards and recognitions. Our Honorary Life Fellowship this year, the Institute has decided to award an Honorary Life Fellowship to Rosemary Margaret Sarah Falcon and to Jacob Neelan van der Merwe for their outstanding service and the support of SAIMM over many years. And Neelan is not here, but no. Yes, Rosemary is here. Okay. Rosemary. Congratulations, Rosemary. The next awards are the 50-year membership awards, and there's a remarkable number of awards for 50 years of membership, which is encouraging in terms of the longevity of us older members of the Institute. So our president is going to present lapel badges to Ian Corrins, who's not attending, Christopher Harrison, Antonio Neto and Christopher Wortley, who are not attending. They have been from the 1st of July 1971 to the 30th of June 1972 in their membership of the SAIMM. The next category is from the 1st of July 1972 to the 30th of June 1973. Walter Channon, who is not attending, Alan Field. Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm not very good at this. I'm still an apprentice. Right. There's Walter Channon, Alan Field, Alfred Fletcher, David Grims. Alfred Fletcher is not attending. Then those who are here today, David Grimsley, if you could come up, please. Jonathan Kirkman. Napoleon Mayer is not attending. Gerald Mayers is not attending, Doug Penman is not attending, and Peter Smith is not attending. So these two gentlemen represent the rest of the cohort. There's hope for us yet. Well done. And then the next presentation is to Peter Robinson, who is attending. Peter?
Just a quick word. It's a great privilege and pleasure for me to receive a membership for 50 years of the South African Institute in Mining and Metallurgy. And it reminds me meeting William Jochum of a international congress we attended, the SAIMM, in Singapore in the early 1990s. It was a great place. And I saw Stillwater Sabanya on the screen. Last week, I was there in Montana at Sabanya Stillwater.
Well done. Thanks, Peter. Thank you very much. Going on to the presentation of awards, medals, and certificates for transactions published in the journal. All of these transactions were published in the journal from March 2023 to February 2024 by members of the Institute. Gold medals are awarded to papers that are of a world-class standard and are judged to be publications that will become key reference in their mining metallurgy fields in the future. For the transaction paper published in May 2023 in a journal entitled Numerical Simulation of Large-Scale Pillar Layouts, the authors were John Napier, who receives a medal, and Francois Milan, who receives a medal. I'd like to call on John Napier and Francois Milan to come up and accept their awards. Well done, gentlemen. Moving on, the next award is to the top advertiser in our journal, and this, I beg your pardon. In addition, the awards committee, Mining would like to present a special certificate of commendation to Francois Milan for his outstanding support of the SAIMM journal. Francois has authored and co-authored in excess of 30 papers, which have been published in the journal since 1996. Right, moving on then, the top advertiser in the journal is pleasure of announcing the top advertiser for the journal. The award is made annually by the SAIMM, and it's the Institute's way of recognizing the continued and loyal support of those companies that advertise in our journal. The award is not made not only on the strength of the amount of money spent by the advertiser, but also in factors like general cooperation, the meeting of deadlines, and the timely settling of accounts. The award this year goes to Patterson Cook, and I'd like to call upon Angus Patterson to accept the award on behalf of the company. And at this juncture, I'm very happy to hand over back to Kondwani, who's going to take over the presentation of the student prizes. Kondwani.
So the following students from the University of Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Wits received the SAIMM Prestige Prize. And then these students are judged by the departments to be the best final year students for 2023. So for Tshwane University of Technology, in attendance, we have SGMCB representing metallurgy. SGMCB. For the University of Johannesburg, in metallurgy, we have Ndumiso Silubani. Ndumiso? In mining, for the University of Pretoria, we have Karabo Mamarakane. For the University of Witwatersrand, not in attendance. In mining, we have Petogo Litswalo. Oh, here's Petogo. So Western Cape students do not attend the AGM, but I'll still go ahead and then announce. For the University of Cape Town, in minerals and metallurgy processing, we have Rana Ibrahim. Okay, for the next part, I'll hand it back to William for the Brigadier Stokes Memorial Award.
So it's my pleasure to announce this award. So just some background, the Brigadier Stokes Memorial Award was instituted in 1980 to commemorate the outstanding contribution to the South African mining industry made by Brigadier R.S.G. Stokes, an honorary life fellow and past president of the Institute. This is the premier award of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, and is made to an individual for the highest, very highest achievement in the South African mining industry. It gives me great pleasure to announce that the award for 2024 is made to Bernard Swanepoel. I'll call on Mark, but first we're going to, okay, I'll call on Mark Munro to read the citation.
Thank you, William. The Brigadier Stokes Memorial Award was established in 1980, as was said, to honour the enduring contributions of Brigadier R.S.G. Stokes to the South African mining and metallurgical sectors. It holds a distinguished place in industry recognition. Its inaugural recipient was Harry Oppenheimer. So you have big shoes to fill, or are filling big shoes. Known affectionately as the Brig, Brigadier Stokes was described as, by one biographer, as a remarkable and resilient man with a superior intellect, inexhaustible energy, and an insatiable curiosity, who travelled widely and had many friends. It is fitting that this year's award is bestowed on Zacharias Bernardus Swanepoel, widely known, or affectionately known, as Bernard. Bernard exemplifies not only these esteemed qualities, but also exhibits a profound commitment and dedication to the industry. His impact on the industry has been extraordinary. He's revered as a compassionate leader. That must be an error. It must be somewhere, but we'll with a staunch belief in people. Transitioning from CEO of one of the world's largest gold mining companies, he has become a champion of small businesses. Bernard brings extensive deep-level gold mining expertise and a notable entrepreneurial and technically innovative approach to mining in South Africa. Bernard Swanepoel holds degrees in mining engineering and financial management, a BCom honours, and stands as one of Africa's foremost mining engineers. A charismatic, visionary, with over 40 years' experience in the mining industry of South Africa, including more than 25 years as senior and executive management role. Raised in Rustenburg, son of an artisan, Bernard embarked on his career with Geng Gold in 1982, starting as a mining engineer graduate under Geng Core Bursary. He ascended through the ranks from ship boss, mine overseer to underground manager, mine manager, culminating his appointment as general manager of Beatrix Mines in 1993. Joining Randgold in 1995 as MD of Harmony Mine, Bernard later served as CEO of Harmony until 2007. During his tenure, he transformed the company from a single lease, loss-making operation to the world's 5th largest gold producer, overseeing 25 acquisitions within 7 years. In 2008, Bernard founded the Growth Point Specialists, the To The Point Growth Specialists, and subsequently Thinkspiration. Through these entities, he co-owns Resources for Africa investment conferences, renowned for the impactful mining industry conferences such as the annual Joburg Indaba, the Junior Mining Indaba, SA Coal Day, PGM's Industry Day, and Hydrogen Day events, all of which he chairs. In addition, Thinkspiration focuses on strategically alignment, cultural change, and leadership development, with Bernard recently becoming a registered member of the Institute of Directors. Within the Implats Group, Bernard serves as the lead independent non-exec director of Implats Board, which I suppose makes him my boss, and the non-executive director of the boards of Zimplats and Impala Canada. He also of Steenkamskraal. I have no idea what that is. And chairman of the state-owned African Exploration, Mining and Finance Corporation. Bernard's board services include 11 years at Sanlam, 15 years at African Rainbow Minerals, and the past president of the AHI, I do know what that is, where he served as the inaugural chairman and the board during its transition to the SPI. It's the Small Business Institute, a prominent business chamber organization. Beyond his professional endeavors, Bernard operates a cattle farm in Limpopo and co-owns a macadamia farm in Mpumalanga. Given all the above, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the ideal candidate to bestow the prestigious Brigadier Stokes Award upon is Bernard Swanepoel. I hereby make my proposal. Unfortunately, we would like Adele to second it, but Adele took flu earlier on today. Huh? So we'd ask Wouter, another colleague of ours, just to second my nomination. Wouter? Say I hereby second the nomination of our affectionate Bernard Zacharias.
Okay. I hereby accept the nomination.
Not accept it. He's going to accept it.
You can accept. I've got. Yeah.
I hereby second.
I hereby second the nomination of Bernard Swanepoel.
Thank you very much. For that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark and Wouter. And thanks to Bernard, and congratulations on receiving the award. I think we'll stand over here.
Sorry.
So I'll ask Bernard to do a short acceptance speech.
At the end of my speech, he ceases to be the president, so he asked me to speak for an hour. Mr. President, special guests, past presidents, past recipients, it's an absolute honor to accept this award today. I'm truly humbled to be joining the company of past recipients. Many past recipients have said that they were surprised, and that is indeed also true in my case. Mark Munro did indicate to me that he and Adele Kutsia kindly thought that I would be a worthy nominee, but I truly did not expect to be here today. I joined this institute 44 years ago as a student member. That was in June 1980, midway through my second year. That was about the time that I was having second thoughts, no, serious doubts about mining engineering as my chosen field of study. Well, I was raised not to quit, and I also had the financial commitments of my union corporation bursary, so I sucked it up and I pushed on. The story of this institution's transformation from what it was, even back when I joined, up to now is phenomenal. The name Southern African Institute is much more inclusive, and the membership is a mirror of how our beloved industry is attracting men and women from diverse backgrounds and from across all technical fields applicable to mining and metallurgy. Let's celebrate transformation, diversity, and inclusion in action. I always try and locate my own story within the context of a bigger shared story. I walked in and I bumped into Dirk van Niekerk. He failed me in every subject I ever had at varsity. I was shocked to see that Peter Robinson is my boss who appointed me at Beatrix, PDK Robinson, same person. I have the privilege of working with industry giants of the moment like Mark and Adele. And my adopted daughter that she doesn't know, Bongi, and I are working, we share an excitement for the passion and a passion for the industry. This helps me, putting my story in the context of the bigger story, to feel part of something, to feel that I made some sort of contribution, and yet it helps to keep me humble, as the story of our industry is so much bigger than any individual. So Brigadier Stokes died aged 96, within days of me starting my mining career in February 1979 as a first-year mining engineering student at Tuks. Let me be clear, those two events are unrelated. We both spent some of our youth as sappers in the army, with him far more successful than me. We both have a liking for opportunistic corporate deals, but there again, he has the upper hand. In 1937, Brigadier Stokes had the foresight to acquire the only remaining available 845 hectares of prospective land on the West Rand. It later became one of South Africa's most famous mines ever, Blyvooruitsig. His obituary in the SAIMM Journal of April 1979 says, his hunting instincts had been aroused. Also, he bullied the directors of Rand Mines into action. That I can relate to. But it continues to say, he also displayed remarkable determination and tact. Also, he was on excellent terms with Goldfields directors. Well, all good analogies fail somewhere. Of course, like me, and like all of us who are following in the footsteps of great people before us, he was not perfect. I quote verbatim from his obituary. He played an important role in the acquisition of Harmony Gold Mine, which is today one of the largest and most important gold mines. Remember, this was back in 1979. So 15 years later, I did indeed join Harmony. And it was indeed during my 12 years as a CEO of Harmony that I worked with phenomenal people, including many technical professionals like yourselves. They often shook their heads when I came up with the next crazy idea. Even today, I look at Fred Kaywood and Clinton Birch's paper on cut-offs on gold mines in South Africa in this July's journal, and I'm still passionate enough and bold enough and probably stupid enough to disagree with the very definition of what a cut-off is, or at least what it's meant to be, according to me, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, we come into an industry, we find it in a certain state. We take learnings and experiences out of it. We make a living and lifelong friendships whilst we're in it. Surely the least we can do is to try and make our small but unique contribution to leave it in a slightly better state. Perhaps each one of our legacies can only ever be determined long after we are gone, like Brigadier Rolf Stokes. He was also famous for his ABC in any matter. Articulate. In any matter, be articulate, be brief, and be courteous. This afternoon, I was hopefully using A to achieve B, and now all that's left is for C. So thank you, Mark, Adele, and all who were involved in bestowing this award on me today. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for talent, opportunities, and good health to have had 45 years of fun in this industry here at the southern tip of Africa. Lastly, Tracy and my family, I stand on your shoulders. Thank you.
Bernard, from me, I'm personally very pleased that after so many years that you finally cracked the nod for this award. And we can't pretend that the decision was not made after hours and hours and hours of robust debate amongst the council members and office bearers. But we did finally come to this decision, and you'll be pleased to know that there was no violence broke out during those discussions. Right, so moving on from that, and well done, Bernard, that's great. Moving on, we're going on now to the moment that Willem has been waiting for quite a long time now, and that's the outgoing presidential award. And I'd like to call on William Jochen to come forward and accept a commemorative plaque as a memento of his term in office. William, you've been a great president. It's been an honor to serve under you. And we look forward to you being our honorary treasurer again. I'm sure that the next is good. Right, then now that William is off the hook, we're going to induct the new president, Dr. Elias Matindi. Oh, are you going to say a few words? Thanks. Sorry. They're not going to invite me to do this job again, I can see that.
Mike, you've done a good job. Yeah, just a few words of thanks. I just wanted to say it's been a great honor serving as the president of the Institute for the last year. I'm certainly very pleased to be the outgoing president, though, and this is my last official responsibility, but it's been a good year. So I think firstly I want to thank everybody who attended today, and then I want to extend my thanks to all members for being part of this wonderful institute. And a special thanks goes to all of you that have given up your valuable time to make the institute better, and that includes the members of the various committees, our special committees, our standing committees, organising committees, branch committees, those of you who've authored papers, refereed papers, made presentations, so our webinars, podcasts, and at our conferences, and presenting short courses. So thank you very much for all of that, because it's this engagement, collaboration and sharing of knowledge that really makes our institute and makes it what it is. And importantly, thanks to all the sponsors and our corporate partners for providing the means to make that happen. So big thanks to Sam and her team. So firstly, for making my life a lot easier during the last year. So Sam really understands the Institute, its history and its protocols, and she's always available to provide support and answer questions. And I think she's got a lot of great ideas, which we'll start see coming forward, going forward. Yeah, so, and then secondly, just to thank the team, because I think they're doing an outstanding job of running the Institute, and the highlights that I mentioned are really all due to their hard work. So thanks to the Council and past presidents for your sage advice and the ideas and suggestions. And then last but not least, thanks to the office bearers. It was quite a challenge to get our busy schedules together to meet, to discuss strategy in addition to our other meetings. We managed to have a few face-to-face meetings, and I think so very many excellent ideas emerged from these sessions, and I think your institute is in good hands going forward. So my very last duty is to to just give you a brief informal introduction to Elias, which will be, and then Mike will read his curriculum vitae. Yeah, so I've really got to know Elias, I guess, since the time we've been on office bearers, and I've learned that he's a leader in his field of pyrometallurgy. And certainly during our meetings and discussions, it came out very clearly that he has a real passion for the education and the development of young professionals. He has a very good understanding of ESG requirements, and much of his research is focused on reducing energy consumption, carbon emissions, and other waste production during the extraction process. So just, I had a quick chat to Selo Ndlovu. I'm sure you all know Selo. She was a past president of the Institute a few years ago, just to see if she had some interesting insights which I could share with you. So she worked with Elias at Wits University. They actually wrote a book together, and that book was on waste production and utilization in the metal extraction industry. I believe Elias has also contributed to another book. But Selo informed me that he developed the curriculum of pyrometallurgy at Wits, which is an excellent curriculum, and they still use it today. And then she then made a point of saying, she says he really loves the blast furnace. And she says he's a real fan of blast furnaces. So I asked her, what is that? What do you mean by that? And she said, well, if he starts talking about blast furnaces, he'll talk your ears off, and you can't get him to stop. So apparently he was, in his contribution in the book, it required him to write a little bit about blast furnaces. But bear in mind, the book is on waste production and utilization. But apparently he wrote far too much on blast furnaces, and they had to send it back a few times to. But I think that passion is really, that curiosity, I think, is what we're looking for in people in the Institute, and I think his credentials will make him a great president of the SAIMM. So, Mike, will you please do the formal? Thank you.
Thank you, William. You know, if this was the United States, that this little comeback after I'd stood you down as president might have been interpreted as being an attempt to cling to power. So but we'll let this pass this time around. It's my honor to introduce our incoming president, Elias Matendi. Elias was born in the rural Shurugwi in Zimbabwe in 1978. He completed high school at Kwekwe High in 1997, and he holds a PhD in metallurgical engineering from the Tohoku University in Japan, a Master of Business Administration, and a BSc Honours in Metallurgical Engineering cum laude from the University of Zimbabwe. A postgraduate diploma in higher education from the University of Witwatersrand. He's a professional engineer, a fellow of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, and a past fellow between 2017 and 2018 of the African Science Leadership Program. He's got over 20 years of experience in academic and applied research, including more than 5 years at mid-senior to senior management levels, including multidisciplinary research, development, and innovation teams in extractive metallurgy. His areas of expertise include the development of nascent pyrometallurgical processes across vast various commodities, with particular emphasis on iron making, steel making, ferroalloy smelting, and the production of technological and base metals. He is a co-author of a specialist textbook on waste production and utilization in the metal extraction industries, and this was published by Taylor and Francis in 2017. And a book on the chapter of the metallurgical unit processes and production of slags for the Royal Society of Chemistry in 2021. Elias is a researcher whose passion lies in developing fit-for-purpose technologies and pyrometallurgical flow sheets capable of processing a variety of feeds materials at high productivity, but with less energy consumption and CO2 emissions. His current research activities are focused on developing integrated pyrometallurgical flow sheets and sustainable technologies to cover valuable metals from industrial and urban wastes such as mining and metallurgical waste, e-wastes, spent autocatalysts, batteries, amongst other materials, and in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and other emerging nexuses. He is an avid reader of scholarly works on technological and economic catch-up within the context of using natural resources as platforms for technological upgrading and foundations for industrialization. Elias joined the SAIMM in 2011 and was extensively involved in revitalizing the Institute's Zimbabwean branch, where he was renowned for organizing sold-out technical visits and networking events. He has actively supported the organization of a number of successful conferences and was instrumental in organizing the first international conference on South African rare earths and the International Conference on Enhanced Use of Thermodynamic Data in Pyrometallurgy, Teaching and Research. Elias also served on the SIMM Council for over 8 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a particularly qualified and wonderful engineer as our new president. Elias, would you like to take the forum?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here to present my talk on the metallurgical slags, a drive to circularity and search for new research agenda. But before I start, I just want to highlight that I do have one slide where I talk about the blast furnace, but I'll try by all means not to really spend a lot of time on it. I used to teach that course. I inherited the course on physical chemistry of iron and steel manufacturing from Professor Herman Eric, and all I did was to improve what was already existing. I did my PhD in Japan, and back in the days in ferrous process metallurgy, if we were not studying about the blast furnace, it was one of those things that you would feel irrelevant. So you can understand where the passion comes from. Surprisingly, nowadays, everyone is trying to decommission all the existing blast furnaces in the world and come up with electric arc furnaces. But I'm also proud to say that working for Mintech, actually, it puts me on the forefront of that cannibalization of what I know very well, and also allow me with the opportunity to start building something new that doesn't exist as yet. So we do have the flagship DC arc furnace at Mintech, which we are doing a number of tests to develop new iron-making processes. The chemistry is still the same because pig iron is pig iron, so I still have something to hold on to. And of course, the metallurgical slags, they are still the same because we're still producing the same material. What is just changing is the amount of carbon emissions that we produce. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly go through my presentation. I need to warn you, this is a very, it's a hypothetical presentation, okay? So I don't have a lot of the data to support what I'm going to say today, so please bear with me. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to spark that idea in someone's head who can go ahead and test and probably come up with a groundbreaking innovation to drive the circularity of metallurgical slags. So this is the layout of my presentation. I'm just going to briefly introduce, understand where the pyrometallurgy, where I come in, and what is the role of metals in our life. I'm also going to talk about something that is probably oversaid, the circular economy, sustainability. Those are buzzwords, but if you don't talk about buzzwords, most people will start losing interest and don't listen to you. So I did put in some bit of buzzwords, some bit of beautiful pictures as well, so that we could remain connected. So I'm going to talk about the pyrometallurgy, its role in the circular economy and sustainability, and then I'm gonna delve into the core of my presentation, which is the metallurgical slags. What are they? You know, what makes them indispensable? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And of course, you'll see that usually with a presentation, you start by having a problem statement. But for me, I'm putting the problem statement right at the end, because what I'm trying to do here is to highlight some areas, potential areas of exploration. Whether they make sense or not, I think we can have that debate some other time. But I'm just saying these are potential areas for exploration, and these are areas where we could have impact in order to increase the circularity of metallurgical slags. Because historically, if we look at slags, we've always considered them as byproducts as waste. But I'm saying that thinking now, if we really apply our minds, we can actually come up with something new. So I took this picture. And as mentioned, I am from Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe, in the Midlands, and I just started, maybe it's probably befitting for me to start my presentation by looking at some of the prehistorical, civilizations and their roles and how they played, and most importantly, what made those communities, those prehistoric communities tick. It's probably the production, the ability to produce metals and master metals and use them for whatever that they needed. For example, here I'm giving you just a snippet. There are other civilizations as well. We've got the Mapumbuhwe civilizations where they've mastered the art of metals. And we're saying here on my right, you can see that it's iron making. So it starts there. So it's been in the genes. It's not the blast furnace per se, but it was a small blast furnace based relative to those days. And I just took some beautiful pictures. The author of that paper is SAIMM AGM, he was doing archaeology when we were studying together at the University of Zimbabwe. Had I known that he was going to go into archaeometallurgy, I probably would have been a better friend of him, because I was also studying metallurgy in my undergrad. But I just wanted to highlight that metals have been the backbone of civilizations. We can go back in history, and even as we speak today, metals still form the backbone of our lives. And we look at metals being one of the most ubiquitous, metals and alloys being one of the most ubiquitous engineering materials that we need for us to survive in many different forms. We might not be aware, but I just put in a nice picture there, because I just felt like, if you try to look at it, you can look at, it's a sci-fi kind of picture, which really shows the past, the present, and the future, okay? And within all those different time zones, what is common there is the metals and the ability, our ability to master the refinement of metals, the fabrication of metals, and also to use the metals for different forms of trade and sometimes destructive warfare as well. But here we're looking on the good things. And on the right here, I just put in a picture. I'm still looking for the original source. I really love the picture because it really shows the role of metals through the evolution of man, through our evolution. And now we're looking at copper being the future metal, and people talk of copper being indispensable to the green revolution, to the renewable energy evolution and so forth. And we're saying, if you look at this, it shows the level of sophistication of humankind. And within that level of sophistication of mankind is the ability to use metals, and that ability has provided us with the technological advancements, technological developments that we need. And as the human as humans, we start to develop population growth and technological advancements as well. All these are centered on metals. I think bringing everything home, I took this on the Minerals Council. When we say mining metals, I'm trying to say without mining, there's no metals. Okay, I started my introduction with metals, but metals have to be mined in one form or another, and they have to be processed through one process or another. And when you look at the role of mining within the South African context, it is something that is phenomenal. And I really did put this slide here to talk to the people who are in this room, because the Southern African Institute of Mining Metallurgy looks at the participation across the various different value chains of metals production. It can be exploration. Without exploration, there's no mining. Without mining, mining, there's no extractive metallurgy, there's no smelting. So it is one giant step after another that leads to mining. And I took a quote on the website, on the internet here. It says, mining is not everything, but without mining, there is nothing. And this quote is attributed to Max Planck. And Max Planck is one of the most famous Nobel-winning physicists, a German physicist. And I just also wanted to bring this down to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to say, what is our contribution as people in this room to the SDGs? And we're looking at some of the fundamental issues such as poverty eradication, because when we run successful mines, when we run successful concentrators, when we run successful smelters, we're actually contributing to the economic development and economic growth within that region, employ people and so forth. And we're looking at things, energy, clean energy. And right now we're saying metals are at the center of decarbonization. So without metals, there's no decarbonization. And this is some of the things that usually, as we go through our day-to-day activities in the workplace, we tend to forget about the other social impacts. It's not just working and getting a salary at the end of the day, but it is some other contributions that we are doing as well without really thinking much about it. So I started again by looking at technological advancement and by looking at population growth, urbanization, industrialization. And here I just wanted to point out one fundamental thing, a change in the way we live. We are looking at, if you look at 1980, what this slide here is talking about is the emergence of what are called mega cities, where you have at least a city with more than 10 million people. Okay, if you look at 1980 compared to 2030, 1980 we had about 10 mega cities in the world, and now by 2030, which is almost in 4 years' time, 4 or 5 years' time, we're looking at 43 mega cities in the world. So what does that mean? It means there's going to be a critical and an immense increase in the demand of metals for urbanization, for housing, for high-rise buildings. There's going to be an immense demand for energy. And here it's slightly outdated, 2022, but we're looking at some of the industrial metals such as aluminum, steel, copper, to increase by a phenomenal amount in order to meet the demand. This is just to meet the issue of the need for high housing, which is another one of the fundamental human rights as well. As the population increases, urbanization increases, as the rate of urbanization increases. And again, I deliberately introduced this slide. I know the definition of what is called a critical metal or critical mineral differs, depending on where we stand. But what I've put out here is a comparison of 3 major economic jurisdictions. We're looking at China, one of the biggest, fastest growing economy in the world. We're looking at US, the center of financial and economic power, and we're looking at the European Union as well. And within, if you look at this, what they consider important is different, but from a South African perspective, whatever considered, whatever is important to them, we say we can mine and process and we can smelt it and we can refine it. So this is where I'm going to say, once we start looking at some of these metals, They are critical to the major economic jurisdictions in the world. And why are they critical? Is because of scarcity, is because of their need, their importance in industrialization, because of their contribution to mitigating climate change, which is something that we need, and which is something that is also very urgent to save humanity. Slightly outdated as well, because some of the dynamics have changed, the numbers have gone down, but they've gone down because of overcapacity, not because the need or the demand has changed fundamentally. Okay, so when you look at new metals, new value chains such as lithium, for lithium-ion batteries, when you look at, for those lithium-ion batteries, you need your traditional technology metals such as your cobalt, your graphite, your vanadium, your nickel for the energy transition. Copper, of course, is at the forefront of energy transition. So when you look at the critical metals debate, what does this mean to the mining and metallurgical fraternity? It means more opportunities. It also means more challenges as well. Why? Because when you start looking at population increase, and there's also interesting statistics which says 5 billion people will be living in urban cities by 2050. Okay, and to me, what does that mean? It means there's going to be an increase in the demand of metals and alloys. We're also going to face a lot of resource scarcity, which unfortunately can or may lead to geopolitical instabilities. We're already starting to see a lot of those instances, and we are looking at metals, we're looking at scarcity of food, energy, and so forth. And like I said, it also feeds into the SDGs as well. We are going to see an unmitigated increase in the volume of waste, because for processing more metals, you are going to produce more waste, be it in mining, at the mining stage or the metallurgical stage. And also, once those metals start to come in as well, you're also going to have your end-of-life materials that we need to start worrying about. And of course, within all those contexts, we still have to worry about the anthropogenic climate change, because most of the processes that we are using today are based on using carbon-based reductants and also carbon-based fuels, which in the end, results in the emission of CO2, which results in global warming. But those are the challenges, but I'm looking at the opportunities. There's going to be a demand for more efficient production of metals and alloys from both primary and secondary resources. Okay, and later on, I'm going to introduce the circularity in terms of what is a circular economy within the metals and within the metal space. So our role as engineers, our roles as professionals in the industry, as scientists in the industry, is to mitigate the human-made. Anthropogenic is a term that means man-made impact. So I'm trying to say what we need to do is to find ways, think in advance so that we can mitigate the man-made impact of metal production process. Because we know there's no going back on producing metals. Actually, the world needs more metals today as we speak for us to be able to sustain the energy transition. But in doing so, we need to come up with ways to mitigate the negative impact of those economic activities. And here I just took a common word. You cannot be in South Africa without using the word Ubuntu. And I need to attribute this to my former manager, Isabel. She always used to say we need to develop processes that have got Ubuntu, which means they must be kind to the environment. And when I Googled, there actually is a principle in industrial ecology, in natural ecology, which looks at Ubuntu as a way of coexisting with nature. Okay, and of course the circular economy, which is a global buzzword. Of course, we're looking at smart processes. Resource efficiency is one of those things. There's no need for us to waste resources, and the ability to co-process both primary and secondary resources. And I'll give specific examples later on to say what sort of primary and secondary resources can we co-process and how we can do that. And my colleagues at Mindec, both past and present, there's a lot of work that we've done in improving and developing those processes. So within the economy, principle of circular economy, we're looking at just recovering the values as well. And some, they call it urban mining, because some of that value is within the urban sphere, but some, they call it anthropogenic, mining the Anthropocene, which means also looking at, reclamation and stuff like that. But what is also important before I close off on this one is we have seen the emergence of new value chains, some of the metals that we're not familiar with, for example, looking at spent lithium ion batteries as a source of values. There are certain risks that we're not aware of processing those materials without causing an explosion in the furnace, for example, if we're looking at it as pyrometallurgists. These are some of the challenges. They are grand challenges that affects us as professionals in the industry. But we always say if there are challenges, then it means the opposite of challenges and opportunity. So you see that I also tend to use both words, challenges and opportunities, because I don't think it's fair for us to identify challenges and then without really exploring the opportunities. So which is basically the talk of the major content of my presentation is mostly going to center around challenges and opportunities. And I always say if I point challenges or opportunities, I can walk away and leave someone else to come and make sure that those challenges and opportunities are realized. So it's a way of trying to avoid responsibility in a very smart way. Okay. So I mentioned about mining and metallurgical waste, which are fundamental at primary scale, or at primary processing scale. And by mass, this constitutes one of the biggest man-made streams in the world. And what is worrying about mining and metallurgical waste is we're looking at the presence of potentially toxic metallic elements within those. And this, we can classify them as solid waste, your overburden, waste rock, for example, beneficiation tailings. We can also look at particulate dust from, emitted from furnaces that end up being dumped somewhere, sludges, slags, post-consumer waste also. We consider post-consumer waste, for example, your electronic gadgets, if they are not recycled and reprocessed, we consider that as a waste, as something that is lost. We also have liquid waste such as mine water, wastewater, and most importantly, the most problematic one is acid mine drainage, because it is persistent many, many years, even after the mine has been closed and rehabilitated. And of course, the gaseous waste, we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions. We all know the impact of climate change, that if we don't mitigate the climate change, our activities that contribute to climate change, we might not have humanity talk about in the near distant future. Okay, but all these are challenges, and what we're talking about here is we are going to rely on new minerals, new metals, because the demand for these metals keeps on increasing. It's not going down, but keeps on increasing. And it means the legacy of mining, the legacy of processing waste, the legacy of refining waste is going to stay with us. So what do we do about it? The whole idea is we need to look at many ways, alternative ways for recycling and reusing this waste. And here I'm just, if I can just be allowed to blow off my own trumpet here. In this review paper, my colleagues and I, we did highlight the classic examples of waste and what are the potential options for recycling and reuse as well. What are the challenges and opportunities as well? And with my student at FIS back in the days, we also looked at recycling of bauxite from an electric arc furnace roof, those bricks that are still intact, but reusing them elsewhere within the same process, within the same steel plant. And it was a good project where you can actually reuse those same materials. We're saying whatever is waste in process A can actually be an input in process B. So it's not, sometimes it's not as simple as that. You'll see why the challenges, but we're saying the thinking on its own is what we need to really put forward, emphasize on. And of course, again, with my colleagues at FITS and Stellenbosch, looking at the recovery of critical metals from effluent streams, such as acid mine drainage. Here we're just looking at the science. It's a review paper looking at the science and as well as the challenges and opportunities as well. And of course, always talking about steel making, about slags. And again, here we're trying to highlight that you can actually use iron making and steel making slags as adsorbents for industrial wastewater, or even for contaminated wetlands, depending on the opportunity. Okay, but there are still challenges and opportunities for each and every application that we try to put. So again, to go back to the fundamentals of circular economy, we're saying, what is a circular economy? These are industrial systems where the value of materials and resources is maintained in the economy for as long as is possible, okay? Where the generation of waste is minimized and the end-of-life materials and byproducts are conceived as resources rather than waste. So that is a mere definition that changes everything that is produced in process A that is supposed to be considered as waste and dumped at some site near process A, but consider that as a raw material for the next process. And one thing that is interesting about metals is you can recycle metals as many times as is possible, but there are challenges to that. For example, one of the biggest challenges is collection. How do you make sure that the metals are, collected and brought back into the system? Which is again a social behavior, which is also is just a geographical challenge as well. We're also looking at recycling technologies also being a constraint, and the thermodynamics of separation. Some metals sometimes it's very difficult just separate them from each other. They tend to move in lockstep, one after another. And again, this brings back to the core of my presentation. When you say why pyrometallurgical processes, people always say, yeah, but pyrometallurgical processes are energy intensive. But I just want to look at the inner circle here, where you look at some of those major elements. Some of those metals, it only makes sense to produce them. Let me rephrase. Most of those metals, it makes sense to produce them via the pyrometallurgical process. The kinetics are higher, the efficiencies are higher, as well as you can recover a lot of other byproducts associated with those metals as well. So, in history, pyrometallurgy is probably just second to corruption. It's one of the oldest professions in the world. What is pyrometallurgy? I really tried not to go there. It's 3-4 slides. Then I decided, okay, I might really start going on a tangent and might not find my way back, because that is one of, it is my passion. Pyrometallurgy is my passion. We use high temperatures to process metals, to extract metals from primary concentrates from secondary resources. And right now we're saying from both primary and secondary resources, because we're building processes that need to operate and be able to process both resources. Because it involves energy input, okay? And in so doing, it's a set of physical and chemical processes, so we call them physical-chemical processes combined, because they all happen at the same time again. That involves, gas phases, metals, alloys, mattes, and liquid phases. Sometimes you might actually have a gas solid, a metal slag, whatever, in operating in conjunction. And again, like every other process, there is always going to be products and byproducts. And you are looking at the typical products here, depending on what stage of processing and or refining. We're looking at the alloy matte, we're looking at slags, we're looking at furnace dust as well. These are, those kind of by streams that you always will struggle to manage because of the nature and design of our furnaces. And of course, we're looking at furnace dust, your off dust that if we emit to the atmosphere, it start creating that, climate change problems that I mentioned earlier. And of course, I think going forward, it's not because furnace off gases are not critical, they are critical. Global warming is a reality, and we're all trying by all means to see how we can mitigate that. But the focus of my presentation today is going to be on metallurgical slags. Why? Because they are produced in very high volumes, and also because of the indispensability of metallurgical slags in the processing, in the production of metals. So what are slags? Really, it's one of those that you can never, sometimes you can never come to a common definition, even among us as metallurgists. If we were to go to a pyrometallurgy conference, you'll find that someone will always have a different understanding or different definition. But the generic definition here is one that I'm going to use. These are complex, crystalline, glass-like, or amorphous materials produced as byproducts in the smelting and refining of metals, mattes, or alloys. Okay, and it can be crystalline, glass-like, or amorphous. So it depends on what happens to it during once you've done with the once it's tapped from the furnace. And how are metallurgical slags formed? They are formed from the reaction between fluxes, and fluxes are materials that we intentionally add in the furnace as part of the feed, okay, to make sure that we achieve a certain or desired conditions in the furnace, so that the furnace sometimes, let's say, let me give a common example that is used by pyrometallurgists, so that the furnace does not get constipated. Okay, so that's a classic example. But we add fluxes, those fluxes react with gangue minerals, that is part of the ore or concentrates, and then also it acts as, the slag acts as a sink for impurities. And naturally, metallurgical slags are crucial in controlling the efficiency of this melting and refining processes. There are different types of slags depending on what you are producing. We've got the ferrous slags, classically referring to those that are produced in the iron making and steel making processes. And they are mostly the calcium oxide, silica, alumina, MgO, and FeO system. And we've got the ferroalloy slags. We're classifying them according to the commodity here. They can be different within the ferroalloys categories themselves, but this mostly contains silica, MgO, and alumina. And of course, the non-ferrous slags that are produced in the production of non-ferrous metals. And we're looking at the FeO, silica, alumina, sometimes calcium oxide systems. Okay. And one of the core aspects of metallurgical slags is the indispensability in the operation of the furnace. But the biggest challenge is the volumes that are produced within each unit process, as well as the potential environmental impact that these slags can have. Okay, and we're looking at the properties within the furnace, and that I think over the years, the pyrometallurgical industry for close to over 100 years is really did invest a lot of effort in understanding the physical-chemical properties, but the volumes depend on what you are producing, depends on the quality of the raw materials. So if you've got very bad raw materials, your slag volumes will also increase because there are more impurities to mop out from the furnace. And we always work in pyrometallurgy by looking at the slag chemistry, optimizing the slag chemistry. And back in the days when I used to teach, I always used to say, to give students a question to say, take care of the slag, and the furnace takes care of itself, comment, and that will be 20 marks. And I used to be very unpopular for that. The whole idea is I just wanted, my students to understand what are slags, what is the role that they play in slags, and why is it important to design your slag systems in such a way that your furnace can operate, And we always say, once you've got that fundamental knowledge of slags, you can unlock the efficiency within the furnace. But that's a problem, because now we're saying you can focus on the furnace, but we're not looking at what happens to the slags when they are out of the furnace, out of your system. It becomes someone else's problem. And you will see that that's where my problem statement is based on. I mentioned about steel as one of the most ubiquitous raw materials or engineering materials. And here I just wanted to highlight, to say, if you're looking at, probably let's start looking at the blue here. When you look at where is steel, what is the role of steel in your life? The car that you drove coming here, or if you took a how train, the rails and everything, it's all dependent on steel. But for steel, it doesn't start as steel, it doesn't start as stainless steel, that we use for cooking, for example, for those who love beer, the brewer will use for, the food grade stainless steel. It doesn't start as that. It starts as fundamental raw materials such as iron ore, metallurgical coal, scrap, alloys, aggregates, energy, and by energy, it can be electrothermal processes, which is electric arc furnace, or it can be similar to the blast furnace from the combustion of your coal and coke in the furnace, which is problematic. But these processes, the iron and steel manufacturing processes, convert this and fabricate them into products that are end usable. I promised that I'm not going to talk about the blast furnace or the chemistry of iron and steel making, but my apologies. I just want to, I wouldn't talk about slags without talking about iron making slags or steel making slags. But let me start by saying, what is the sequence here? We start with your cold iron ore. Okay, the iron ore that I'm sure, Sisheni or, direct shipping ore, and you do something to it, through the blast furnace, okay, yeah, or some other process. It's not only the blast furnace, okay. You produce your pig iron, we call it pig iron, but it's crude iron from the blast furnace or from another, whatever primary process. Then the next stage is you need to remove the impurities from that crude pig iron, okay? We use fluxes for refining, and this can happen in the blast furnaces where it plays two major roles, melting and refining as well, okay? Or it can be in the steel making process. I will show you a flow sheet later on. And here I've given examples of phosphorus, for example, as is one of the major impurities. We understand phosphorus impact on steel properties, where you add your lime and oxygen, you need an oxidizer, and phosphorus goes to slag, and that happens in the steel making plant, and sometimes in the hot metal treatment stage between the blast furnace and the steel making plant. And also look at sulfur. During desulfurization, you also want to remove those sulfur, because sulfur comes in naturally with your ore, it comes in naturally with your coke and coal, whatever reductant that you are using. And this can usually happens in the blast furnace, and the conditions for sulfur removal are different from the conditions for phosphorus removal. Sulfur, you need reducing conditions, so which means you cannot do it concurrently, and phosphorus, you need oxidizing conditions. So you're gonna have to start, sequentially. It becomes very complicated, but it's also relatively easy because the system is designed to cater for the weakness of the previous step. Then we look at the refining, the further refining to remove dissolved impurities. You see, the irony that I never got to understand about iron and steel making is you use your carbon to take out the oxygen from iron ore, but that carbon dissolves in the pig iron, and then you use oxygen to take out that carbon that you've put in the first place. And that oxygen dissolves, okay, in your crude steel. And now use deoxidizing elements like aluminum or silicon metal or calcium metal or whatever is cheap, or sometimes nowadays we're talking of cerium, for example, and to remove the dissolved oxygen. But then you create another problem. Those elements get oxidized and form what are called non-metallic inclusions that you need to work again in the next stage. So it makes the process long and long and longer. But I think we also need to understand that it's a necessary challenge. So just to put the highlight here, in 2023 alone, I think to be exact, it's about 1.888 million metric tons of crude steel that was produced globally. You can understand the scale in 2023 alone. And if you look at the processes, I talked about the blast furnace, and I'm not going to spend more time here. I think what I wanted here is just to show you how much slag, what is the slag rate for per each unit process, depending on the raw materials level of sophistication. As well, with the blast furnace, we're looking at 150 to 300 kgs per ton of hot metal that is produced. For the BOF, we're looking at between 50 to 100 kgs of slag per ton of crude steel. Of course, it can be lower if there is a prior step for pre-treating the crude steel. And of course, if we are producing the steel using the electric arc furnace, that is very variable because it depends on your scrap rate, it depends on your other additions of ferrous additions and so forth. The range, common range that is available is between 60 to 270 kilograms per ton of steel. Okay, and that's looking at now working back the numbers to a billion, to almost 1.9 billion tons of crude steel that is produced. You can now work the numbers. It means the volumes are humongous, and that's a problem. And when I look at stainless steel, which is one of the most ubiquitous metallic engineering material, we're looking at the electric arc furnace producing slag that contains between 3 to 7% chromium as chromium, if we consider it as chromium oxide, Cr2O3. And what is stainless steel by its nature is an alloy that contains anywhere between 10.5 up to 18% chromium. So it means the level of the presence of chromium in the slag is indispensable. And what is the problem with chromium? It is one of the most known carcinogenic material, I think almost rivaled next to lead and mercury. So it's not something that we can easily wish away. We need the stainless steel, but these are some of the consequences where we produce slags. But we're saying we understand that is part of the nature where we produce our metals, but we still need to find ways to look at mitigating the impact of those slags on the environment. And I just again selected a few random unit processes here for ferrochrome because I talked of chromium. Whether the chromium again has to come from another source, which is the ferrochromium smelting. And South Africa is one of those, has been at the forefront of the chrome industry for decades. Yes, we lost to China, but I think there's still an opportunity to reclaim that as well if we really apply our mind with energy efficient processes. And again, the chemistry will differ depending whether you're producing charged chrome, you're producing high carbon ferrochrome, whatever raw materials. But what is important again is to note that we're producing, there's always going to be residual chromium in the slag that is produced from ferrochromium, from the ferrochromium smelting process. And like I said, humanity would not exist without stainless steel, because it would be a mitigated disaster. But with stainless steel, we're going to need ferrochromium that is going to have its own impact as well on the process. But again, I know I'm kind of scaring you, but please don't be scared. I have a few hypotheses that I think will help us to address some of the issues that we see here. So what happens to the slags? Naturally, they tend to be disposed of in slag pits around the smelters. But the problem with that is those slags do contain a lot of potentially toxic elements. I'm saying potentially toxic elements because they also can be bound in very stable phases that there's very little or no impact at all in the environment. So it's not necessarily that 1.8% chromium is going to leach and is going to affect you tomorrow. No, please don't get me wrong on that one, okay? Sometimes nature by itself, because of the way, remember in pyrometallurgy, we're trying to reverse. It's similar to geological processes where metal started as metallic elements, and through geological process, they solidify as minerals, oxides, stable oxides. And now we're reversing that to metals. So the slags, as they solidify as well, there's always that, that opportunity from nature, but it's not always the case. Then what it means is, beautiful as it is when it's tapping, I got this on the Glencore Australia website. I think this is really beautiful from a pyrometallurgical point of view. I could look at this for days. But what does it look like when it's after 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years? And what is the impact? What is the potential environmental impact of those slags on the environment? I think the answer it's debatable at the moment because we can say there's no impact, but there's always impact because it's a man-made activity. Any man-made activity will have an impact on the environment. And I just wanted to just to show a little bit of how some of the slags would look like if you look at them through under a microscope, okay? For example, on the left here, I've got a ferrochromium slag, and you'll see that most of the, some of the phases involves the formation of spinels. And that's really a good thing because once the chromium that is bound in the spinel, it means its solubility, its leachability is very, very low, okay? And again, but the problem now is if we start having some of the partially altered chromite phases that are present in the slag, it becomes a problem. But it means those could potentially be unstable chromium phases, and it becomes a problem when you dispose them. And again, these are slags, historical slags taken from a paper that looked at Tsumeb smelter slags in Namibia. And what we're looking at here is you can see that there are, the presence of spinel phases. We love that for stability purposes. But you also have some feldspar phases, some arsenates as well. And what happens to those phases is naturally over time, they tend to be soluble into the groundwater, and they do affect the natural ecosystem. And that is really, really problematic because metals tend to accumulate in the ecosystem. They don't degrade. And that is a problem, okay? So again, here it's if you look at it, it's different scale, but I just wanted to show that even when we look at we'll see, I'll talk about challenges of conventional processes to recover metals from slag. These are mitigated by the level of the phases, the fine phases. Some of them are congruous slag phases, which means they dissolve and form similar slag phases in the slag. So the recovery of metals from slag is called slag reclamation. This is, I think the science is known. There are many different ways to do that. You can do it through the physical beneficiation, your crushing, milling, and then you use your physical methods. And these are the most popular because they are cheap and they are you can readily rig them at a slag dump, and you can start recovering your process, your values from slag. But the problem is there's also the issue of low efficiencies, because sometimes the phases are not properly separated, and then the efficiency of physical separation becomes problematic. And we also have components that are dissolved in slag, which means they tend to take the physical properties of the bulk slag phases in which they are dissolved in. And again, pyrometallurgical processes have been designed, and I think when I look at the legends in the room, I think Rodney Jones has been very instrumental in developing slag cleaning processes using the Mintex DCAC furnace, and Nick Bucks as well. I think started way back before we even started school. But there's always a catch in that sometimes the metal concentration in the slag is way too low for you to justify that level of investment. So which means there's always going to be something that is very difficult, that limits, regardless of how efficient the pyrometallurgical process, there's always going to be something that affects its impact. And again, of course, the hydrometallurgical process, I'm not a big fan of hydrometallurgical process. The kinetics are too slow. The kinetics are too slow. You need very humongous, reactor tanks for you to achieve very little dissolution kinetics. I think it's simply a waste of time. I hope Professor Selonlof is not dialing in on time. But I'm just taking advantage of different time zones. She has moved to US, so she's probably sleeping now. But again, we are saying we understand it's not because the industry is sitting there and dumping everything toxic on the environment like what some people would like to entail, but there are also challenges, like thermodynamic challenges that will affect the impact of whatever interventions we would like to do. But I just want to say slags are not a waste, because slags have properties that are well documented that are used in the cement industry, okay? And we've taken note of the blast furnace slags, which have been 100% have been adopted as aggregates in the construction industry, as well as in the production of Portland cement. The only challenge is sometimes the smelters tend to be geographically very far away from where the economic activities are, and that limits, the applications. We also understand that steelmaking slags have got very high basicity, which means the level of calcium oxide in steelmaking slags is very high, which really is an obvious replacement for limestone, because cement industry requires limestone, and they have to calcine the limestone, produce a lot of CO2. Actually, I think the calcination, the clinker production for cement industry is one of the second to steel making in terms of polluting, and it is a big driver. But again, when you look at the presence of other potentially toxic elements, it makes the industry, the construction industry, to be reluctant to adopt some of these major slag systems that we're producing. So it means if we look at ways to recover metals, iron, for example, was mostly, and other contained metals, and we'll look at that with an intentional approach to condition the slag so that the construction industry, so that the cement industry can look at it as a resource. It can be a game changer. And here I just proposed a flow sheet from one of the papers that I co-authored with my colleagues at FITS, where we look at how we can condition, how we can treat iron and steelmaking slags and use them as adsorbents for wastewater. It was a review paper, but we did look at some of the challenges and opportunities as well. But what is important here is, as we move towards ultra low CO2 cement production, steelmaking slags are at the center of that discussion. But again, there's always a catch, like I said, to say there are challenges, and here we're just trying to summarize the different types of slags, to say what are they produced, what are the challenges, the issue of dissolved elements, potentially toxic elements, the issue of entrained metallic elements as well, limits the direct, or the acceptance, let me say the acceptance of some of these slags as materials. So what is the problem? I think I've been talking about opportunities. We can do this, we can do that. We know that slags are not going to go away, and they are indispensable in the smelting and refining of metals and alloys. For as long as we need that copper, additional copper to fuel the energy transition, the green transition, we still also are going to produce slags at the same rate as we're producing the same copper. And the problem now is these slags tend to be tapped and disposed of in impoundments or landfills around the smelter, leading to potentially long-term environmental challenges. I'm being very diplomatic here, but it is real, because the presence of metals, we don't know how they're gonna be like 100 years from today, okay? But as pyrometallurgy industry, we've dedicated a lot of effort to understanding and developing novel slag systems, so that we can operate our furnaces better, we can operate our furnaces easier. However, we haven't really emphasized integrating those novel slag properties to the process and environmental performance. What happens to them after the furnace has always been someone else's problem, as long as your furnace runs nice and clean. So we are saying here, slag engineering is a pragmatic approach. And I'll explain why I'm saying slag engineering, because I'm saying we are intentionally looking at the properties of slag, okay? But it can only work if you look at it in conjunction with optimizing the process chemistry, the flow sheet itself, how it's integrated to other, the pieces are integrated together, as well as the overall engineering design. Those things are very important. And here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing what I'm calling a new research agenda. It's not really new, but I just wanted to make it fancy. My apologies for that. But we want to integrate the slag properties to meet both the in-process, that is furnace operation, and the post-process, that is environmental performance. And how do I propose to do that? I've developed, it's still work in progress, but I've developed a few hypotheses to really help us to guide the thinking. And I hope someone can pick up these hypotheses and really convert them into something, into a process that has got, real impact within our industry. We are saying you can engineer the slag properties by optimizing the extraction properties, so that their post-furnace applications and performance can increase the industrial ecology of the smelting industry. And you are looking at controlled crystallization and microstructure conditioning as core to the slag engineering, especially those that contain transition metal elements. This has been widely reported, and we are saying the synergy between in-process versus post-process is what I'm trying to highlight here. And we're also saying transition metal bearing slags with desired properties can be engineered and maintained during solidification to enhance their separation from the bulk slag phases. And again, there's a lot of research that really has been done that points to the possibility of really synthesizing and crystallizing these ideas into an industrial process. And we're looking at ferrite phases, the formation of ferrite phases during solidification. And those ferrite phases or spinel phases, we know that they've got very high magnetic properties, and if you can crystallize them and grow them, it means you can actually enhance their separation from the bulk non-magnetic slag by using magnetic separation. And we're also proposing looking at intentionally engineering the slag properties at crystal level. There are many ways of doing that, according to literature, where you actually can make sure that you actually develop those magnetic phases to grow and coalesce, so that you don't need to mill very fine. Like I showed you the earlier is backscattered electron images, where you actually have to mill very fine for you to recover those materials. So my second hypothesis for the night is looking at competitive crystallization, especially for complex slag systems that contain multiple or different metallic elements, or that are used, for example, let's say for stainless steel, you will have nickel oxides present, chrome oxides present, vanadium oxide present, and we're saying competitive crystallization and growth rate of crystals in those slags is dominated by spinel and ferrite slag systems. So as you start, the temperature drops, the phases with with the highest melting point start to crystallize out first. And that we've observed in the lab at pilot scale, various scales, and within those, you actually start realizing that there are transition metals involved, and those transition metals will form oxides, and transition metal oxides tend to be magnetic because of the nature, the electronic structure and bonding of those materials. So what we're saying here is, if you control the cooling rate, the crystallization parameters, deliberately controlling crystallization parameters by controlling the cooling rate and chemical composition, for example, you can actually impact the competitive crystallization and growth rate of the spinel and ferrite phases. And those naturally have high magnetic signatures, so it means they can actually be separated from the non-bulk phases by magnetic separation. And again, the volume fraction, which is very important in slags because you need to have the larger particle sizes, and the distribution, and so how are they distributed within the slag is linked to the composition and the cooling conditions. So by playing around those two major parameters, it is very relatively doable to come up with I think this is this point is a repetition, but we're saying complex slags, when there is competitive crystallization, you start with your spinels, because they've got their very high melting point, and grow those spinels and coalesce them, and then those spinels will tend to grow, and then you can separate them from slags by magnetic fields. And we all know that magnetic processing, it has been done in the physical beneficiation of minerals. Magnetic separation has also been widely in slag reclamation. So we do understand that those properties are well known, and what it means here is, what my third hypothesis again here is to say, if you are having spinels or ferrite phases that are solidifying within a liquid mass of slag, what happens to them? You do have, if you impose an external magnetic field or an electromagnetic field, you are most likely to result or to influence the crystallization behavior, as well as the coalescence of those metal-enriched phases, the spinels. And there is literature that points to that possibility. Why? Because again, we're looking at the magnetic properties, magnetic susceptibility of the different materials. We understand from the physics and material chemistry, but we still need to apply these two and test these to the slags. And again, here I'm talking of magnetohydrodynamics. It's a very interesting field where you apply an external magnetic field to a magnetically conducting field. But I'm saying, for example, we're looking at liquid metals those who have been in the steel industry, where you do actually, you're refining your non-metallic inclusions. You can use this in electrolytes. In water purification, you actually use magnetohydrodynamic principles in plasmas, for example. But there is a nice and interesting hypothesis which says that you can actually use them in poorly conducting oxides, such as oxide melts and glasses. And this is where my third hypothesis is based on. And we're saying, based on what is out there, the knowledge that we have, our understanding of modern slags. Modern slags are ionic, and they conduct electricity. And anything that conducts electricity tend to be magnetically conductive as well. And that's an opportunity, okay? And how does that happen? Because slags consist of cations. You have highly mobile cations, and you can work on the slag properties to increase the electrical conductivity of slags in the molten state. Okay, and here I'm looking at seminal literature that has been conducted. But we're also saying now is, my search here, when I say in search of a research agenda, is to say, if we combine the magnetohydrodynamic principles that we already know, that has already been used out there, together with the magnetic, or the understanding of liquid slags, and then you combine these two principles during the solidification and crystallization, you are most likely to influence the trajectory as well as the mobility of the phases that are being formed, especially those phases that are magnetically conducting in a non-magnetic mass. Okay, so again, this is these are the three hypotheses that I'm proposing. And of course, I'm saying, what are the challenges? There's always be challenges, but where there are challenges, there are opportunities, okay? And we're looking at integrating post-furnace treatment to the existing infrastructure, because once you need, it's only economic to treat, slag engineering is only economic if you are looking at it from treating molten slag that is directly coming from a furnace. Both don't want to remelt again and then do a slag engineering. So that integration is very key to achieving these three objectives that I highlighted. The second is critical success factor, I call it a killer variable, is our ability to understand the transient. Remember, we understand the physical properties of slags when they are solidified, because we can measure them. We understand the physical chemical properties of slag in the molten state, because we've been measuring them for decades. But in between, we have this black box, and this is one of the research agenda that I'm proposing as well, to say the knowledge of transient thermochemical and thermophysical properties during solidification is key to the success of my hypothesis. And again, we're saying literature on electrical conductivity is there. It is available in open literature. We can measure magnetic properties of slag. You can design a magnetic separator, measure the magnetic susceptibility of various, slag phases, various slag particle sizes. But what about the transit changes? As the slag starts to solidify, you start to have, changes in the viscosity. So does the electrical properties, they also change. And if electrical properties change, I'm saying the magnetic properties are also going to change. How do we integrate that? And again, I think once we're able to answer some of these questions, I think there is a lot of opportunities for slag engineering. And of course, it's always a challenge, availability of data that we can use to design. And I think that's the reason why I don't have many answers today, is I'm still trying to build and develop a database of data that can really solidify my hypothesis. And that is always a challenge. But I always say, when there is a challenge, it means there's an opportunity. It means someone, there's still room, more opportunities to unlock value. And we understand there is limited thermochemical data during solidification. Computational fluid dynamic modeling models, I don't think they would really apply, because we are working in between the very mushy zone. We're starting from liquid solid. There's always a challenge there. And we're also looking at computational molecular modeling data. There's a lot that's coming up, being published, but so far I'm still struggling to find out, pinpoint, and say, this is the model that could help me to answer the questions that I've just posed today. That's why I decided, okay, I think I need to share these challenges with someone else, so that. But at this stage, there's limited data, but that limited data, it means we have the opportunity to generate the data and actually use it to design the. So in conclusion, I'm sorry I probably took more time than I had promised, but in conclusion, slags are going to be here forever with us as long as we produce metals, be it from secondary resources. Your electronic waste recycling, your spent autocatalyst recycling is still going to produce slags. Your lithium-ion batteries recycling is still going to produce slags, okay? Problem is they constitute the high-volume product, and then that high-volume product, of course, due to the presence of your potentially toxic elements, is going to have serious environmental challenges. So, which means the business as usual of dumping slags and walking away is not going to be really impactful in the future. And we do have strong fundamental knowledge of the fundamental processes, and we're saying this knowledge, if applied at the the post-process or post-furnace applications, it has got the immense opportunities to unlock the applications. And of course, the key aspect here is the slags are natural candidates for replacing cement clinker, for replacing limestone in the production of cement clinker. And for us to do that, we are saying if we really manage to improve the ecology or the perception of slags in the construction industry, these slags can be a game changer, which means you can really link a cement plant next to a steel plant and have an integrated process that can. So again, in conclusion, I'm saying my new research agenda that I promised is based on integrating the novel slag system that we've been developing for decades and the process designs that we've been perfecting for decades to meet both the in-process and then the environmental requirements of the slags. And again, slag engineering, like I said, is the key. Why I'm saying slag engineering, it means fundamentally looking at the way we understand slags right now, from the process and as it passes through the various stages of processing up to the reuse and end product. And again, I think as a parting shot, I really want to thank the support from Mintech executives for they allow me time to volunteer to the SAIMM, my Mintech colleagues. SAIMM Council, of course, I think the support that we have received so far, part of my growth process within the SAIMM has been immense. And office bearers, I really thank you. The broader SAIMM community, of course, family and friends, and special thanks to my mentors, Prof. Love, unfortunately she could not be here with us, and Professor Smarte, I'm not sure if he's here, but I'm sure he probably forgot we have to talk about it. And of course, part of the work that I presented today, the hypotheses that I presented today, they are funded by Mintech, and it is work in progress, and I hopefully think that very soon I'll probably be coming up with some of the results to the 3 hypotheses that I've developed. But today, this is what I have, and of course, I have a number of references for those who might be interested in exploring this further. And congratulations again to the SAIMM for 130 years. I think that's not a small number. It's quite huge, and we really look forward to engaging with you guys for the next 12 months, and hopefully we grow together. Like I always say, thank you very much, and looking forward to your support. Thank you. I will only take questions during the refreshment session. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, President. It was a fascinating discussion, and when miners like Bernard and myself can actually understand all of that stuff, then you did a good job of presenting to us. Well, kind of understood it, yeah. But it was a great presentation. Thank you very much indeed. This is the end of our program for the evening, and I just would like a vote of thanks to the organisers and to the Institute in general, and we'd like Bongi and Solengu to give the vote of thanks. If you'd come up, Bongi, please. Thank you.
I hope all of you can see me and hear me. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your presence today and for being here. I would like to honor Sam and the team for the work that you guys do. I can attest to the many back and forth emails that you've sent to us in preparation for the AGM today, and for the excellent work that you guys continue to do. So thank you very much. I'd also like to take time to thank the office bearers, to thank our council members, our branch chairpersons, those that have flown into the country today. Thank you for making the time to be here. Thank you to the TPC members, the YPC, past presidents, as they continue to set aside time. And as you know, that this is a voluntary institution that without you and without your commitment, we wouldn't be where we are, 130, and definitely going for another century. I'd also like to take the time to honor long-standing members, and I think to use our president's words, legends, such as Dr. Falcon, Bernard, Zachariah, for allowing us to stand on shoulders of giants. I think it's without, mention that you guys spend your time, passionately so, to continue to nurture some of us in industry, and that is something that you do, without asking for anything in return. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you still walk a journey with us, because we need you. I'm pleased to see that in as much as I think we're honoring our legends, that we're also honoring the work done, technical work done by our young professionals, because without you, the future of mining is bleak. So it's great to see that young and old are really, not old, matured, are coming together, because this is what we need. And I think I wouldn't be completing without thanking our corporate partners, because you continue to support us and ensuring that we continue to be relevant in the industry. So thank you very much for your contributions. I'd also lastly like to thank our incoming president and for your address. I'm sure the opportunities that you've laid out have fallen into the right soil, and that there will be further research coming out of this in a couple of years. William, thank you very much for your leadership, and we continue to look forward to working with you. So without further ado, I know that the drinks are awaiting us. So I would like to declare the meeting closed and thank everyone present and online for their attendance. I would like to invite you for drinks. The drinks are taking place in the next room, which is to my right and to your left as you walk out. And I would also like to request that all the office bearers, council members, YPC branch chairpersons, past presidents, please remain in the room for 4 pictures. Thank you very much.